XL's mysteries, discovered and uncovered.
Jack and Dim.
The XL Files.
Trust. No cell.
As always, there's no one formula to rule them all, and it's just trying to figure out the specific use case. And
I feel
Don't
like
let Elliot
there
hear you
is
say that.
there is one formula to rule them all, and it would be XLOOKUP if there were. Welcome to the XL Files, because the truth has no #ref errors. We're here to talk about those Excel skills you won't see on your standard training course. We're deep in the world of competitive Excel. And yes, that's the thing. We like to talk landers, robots, and secret tips and tricks. I'm Jack Kennedy, and I'm joined by the world champion, Triple European Open winner, and ACES winner, the closer, Dim Early. Yay. When we chatted about who we wanted on next, the list is still so long, but we decided to stick with current affairs and bring in a Ben from the Benevolent tournament. So today we're joined by the most organized of Bens and of the XL world, Ben deLeon. He kicked the tournament off with a case on deep sea diving under pressure, and we are now 2 battles in of 5. Ben is also the originator and impeccable planner of the Burning Clippy gatherings, which have fast become the best part of our XL meetups. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
thank you, appreciate it.
Today we'll be discussing XLOOKUP and all it can do in competitive Excel. But before that, we're going to jump straight in, round up everything which has happened since last month. So it's time for everyone's favorite jingle.
Step right up and take the stage. It's time for Dim's Golden Age. Ain't it great? Esports athletes share their flair. Dim's Golden Age beyond compare.
Take it away.
Alrighty. So for once, it's, we're still very much in a golden age, but it's only been a month since last time, and it's going to be a manageable number of things to report on. So I'll start with the kind of regular running things. So we've had one Road to Las Vegas round since our last event. That was Dots by Kobe Dombrowski, plus a director's cut. I don't know if you guys have had a look at that. It is, there are director's cuts where it's like, oh, this, if I had included this, it would have been 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes, and that's too much, so I had to take it out. And then there's director's cuts where it's like, this case inspired a multi-hour exploration. The Dots one was more one of those. It comes with a very cool, like maybe the best ever hint visualization, because you have like a slider where you can watch the game play, and where it tells you like, hey, here there's, the first important event is at move 35 where this happens, and the next important event is at move 67 where this happens. It's really, really slick. Kobe told me he was planning to use it for the main case, but then they ended up making some changes too close to time for him to have it ready. But yeah, that's like setting a new bar for the visualization side of things. Then local chapters, we have had 2 Brazil cases. We had round 6, which was about World Cup sticker trading. And we had round 7 just yesterday. Yes, yesterday, which was about tooth cleaning and data cleaning in the very, on-brand Klinsmann pun inspiration. And then we had a UK case last weekend, Suitable Suitor, a rare Elliot Patterson outing, which was excellent. And then I can't remember if the first round of the new DAC starter tournament was before or after our last one, but the second round is happening right now as we record. So the DAC team have are now running a regular thing with cases pitched at a sort of beginner or slightly above beginner level, so much more approachable. Honestly, I tested the first one of these for Julian, and he said, I want you to test this. It's supposed to be a really approachable case. And I thought, okay, it's Julian saying he's written an approachable case, so probably this is gonna, be a 25-minute sprint as opposed to a 35-minute sprint or something. But it was genuinely like a relatively casual 10 minutes for someone who's used to all this stuff, but a good chance to learn for other people. So that's continuing on now, and I think the plan is for there to be more rounds of that in the future. Then there've been a couple of community cases. So there's been Grayson's third edition of the mania that is portals. We had portals, we had bigger portals, and now we've had many portals. This one fits nicely with the theme of our last episode being about Power Query, because there were 400 Excel files to consolidate to get the information to answer the questions about the portals. I would say that case was Marmite-esque. Some people loved it and some people hated it. But I think most people, once they figured out the Power Query side of things, enjoyed it. And then last week's one was Enter the Matrix by João Bossa, probably pronouncing that wrong, from Brazil, which was a super fun, visual, interesting one, and also a cool regex one. And then this week's community case is a replay of the case from the Landmark battle, which, yeah, you know that one, Jack.
Yep.
Where Jack and Andrew and Nicola and I recorded ourselves playing the battle outside in front of various landmarks around the world. Oh, yep, look at that. Look at that shiny screen. I've got mine here as well. It's not actually in use just now, but oh, there it is. Shiny screen. Maybe someday it'll even persuade me to use a second screen.
Did you use the second screen during that battle?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I mean, I
saw
actually
it,
I have
saw
used
it
it
there,
sometimes.
but obviously it's only showing the actual laptop screen. It didn't show what was on our second screens in the battle.
So I had I have had a second screen in theory for quite a while. On Oz's advice, I bought a TV as my second screen because he said they're like much cheaper for the same resolution and much bigger size. So I had this like giant second screen that I almost never used. But sometimes when I'm like live streaming, for example, and I need to have controls up on like that I can see but that are not part of my screen capture, I'll use it then. But yeah, this Asus Doodad is definitely better for that than the giant television. So yes.
For FMWC, you don't use multiple screens?
Nope.
At
It's
FMWC,
impressive.
I've got my like answers one place, my Excel somewhere else, and then the PDF somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've got 3 screens. I've got one that's vertical, that you can stick answer sheet on to kind of copy and paste, and then the ultra wide one for Excel. You know what I found when I tested out using the laptop for this battle? We had a laptop that's smaller screen than my current laptop and way smaller than my ultra wide monitor that I normally use with Excel on. And the only second screen was this one, which you can auto rotate, so I could have the vertical one for the website entering the results in. But I actually did better just using a tiny screen than on 3 monitors, ultra wide, the kind of vertical one. I was shocked by like, I don't know if I just had a good week, or if I was actually genuinely doing a bit better on a smaller screen and I need to like scale things down for competitive environment. But
You ever read about constrained prose, like people who try to write stories, never using the letter E, or every sentence has to have the same number of letters, or whatever bizarro thing? I've heard some people say that they feel like they write better with the arbitrary constraint in place. So maybe the little screen is the equivalent to that.
maybe it is. Yeah.
Maybe,
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so last but certainly not least is a benevolent tournament has kicked off since our last session. So we've had the first 2 rounds of that, one by Ben about diving, and one by Ben, which was about getting to the airport on time. There's also a director's cut of the diving. I have not had a chance to give that a go yet, but I was about to say, but I'll get to it anytime now. But I don't know. This is the challenge of the golden age. Is like if you take your eye off the ball for 1 second, and I definitely have because my kids are on holiday and my proportion of my life dedicated to Excel has gone down as a result. Who knows? Who knows when I'll catch up on my.
To be fair, there's only one additional level beyond what you did in the main case, so it's not. I wouldn't say it's too much of a leap, but I was advised that the scope creep into that last level was a little much for a 30-minute to hour-long case.
I was a tester on that case, so I haven't actually done the final case, the regular case. I've only done the director's cut, shall we say, and it was from a testing perspective a bit heavy as you got into that last level as a leap. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
I will say, as a first-time author, in your head, everything kind of makes sense, and it's just the next logical step.
I think
and
that
in your
is
head,
true.
everything is moderately difficult.
Yeah,
I mean, I still don't think the cases I've written that haven't been used are that hard. But Dim assures me, having tested one of them, that it was. So
It was quite difficult, yes.
I'm sure it wouldn't be in this day and age, so we'll see.
Probably easier now. You may just have been ahead of your time.
Yeah, just ahead of my time. That's what it
I will
was.
say, though, even for you, Jack, there's a pre-director's cut version that left enough on the floor that it will be recycled into a new case. Not diving related, but the scope definitely narrowed over time. So
in my experience, everyone, like especially the first few cases, actually a lot of people tend to think it's that final level or two is doable, but it's always a lot harder than we actually think. And I had something similar when we created the International Women's Day case earlier this year, and there were 3 of us working on the case. One of them was concerned that she wouldn't be able to come up with anything hard enough, and I was like, we have way too much that's hard. We're actually removing 2 levels already because they're too hard. So we had to come up with kind of like 2 earlier levels that were just way simpler, or severely simplified versions of certain levels. There were whole levels that were cut out that are actually quite interesting to play, but would probably take a bit longer than you'd expect.
So, director's cut?
yes.
I heard that, and Elliot has done an amazing job with the kind of case management this year for the UK chapter, and added new features and some amazing new things in there. But also the control over the UK cases has been really good. So the kind of like slope of the cases and how it plays through has been really good. And I believe that one of the hard levels, which was our level 6, might get a case of its own at some point, which will be really exciting. I'd love to see that. And the other one, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to have a word. This is off the record. Johnny, don't say. But we might put it out there anyway. I might request some of my old cases back, and also that massive level from that case that we didn't use for feeding into the Jack Attack tournament later this year.
Oh, nice.
But I need to start thinking about that soon. So we'll see. All right. Well, thank you, Dim, for the roundup of the Golden Age. I take it that we got through everything in that one because we finished with the Grand Benevolence.
Yes. There's only been, a dozen or so new cases in the last month.
So, Ben, before we get into your topic for today, which is XLOOKUPs, we can't let a guest appear without an honorary jingle, can we? So,
man who lit up Clippy brought the whole crew near. Rebellion, most benevolent around this. Burning Clippies now are sacrament. deLeon.
Ooh,
So welcome to the podcast. You're officially a guest. Which is to say,
Wait.
I think there's like one guest at the beginning who's not officially a guest because he never got his own jingle. But our main topic of discussion, Ben, you've chosen, is the rabbit hole of XLOOKUP. So let's kick this off by telling us why you picked XLOOKUP.
Well, anyone that's in the chat may have seen Elliot, who ended up as our runner-up behind Dim on the case. Kind of attributed his success there to XLOOKUP, and as I was going through the case, I definitely relied on it. And there are kind of the basics of XLOOKUP, which I feel like in the professional world, I'm still trying to sell and moving people away from index match, which it definitely works, but XLOOKUP, in my view, definitely is better. But then the optional inputs that it allows can really allow you additional functionality, some of which I've used professionally, but especially in the competitive Excel world. So I think it goes a lot deeper than most people realize. So, and even I will say, the regex has been something that has been on my to-do list to learn for a long time. Finally, earlier this year, I think it was one of the cases for the Road to Las Vegas in March, April timeframe. I was like, all right, I'm finally gonna sit down and learn this because it would have made things a lot easier. And so, of course, as soon as I learned that, I realized the regex mode in XLOOKUP makes many things that were quite difficult, quite trivial.
Yeah.
And so, a little bit of that. So, that was kind of the background for why in the XLOOKUP.
Excellent. I think XLOOKUP, I mean, Elliot did a great training course in XLOOKUP as well last year, full stack modeler, and I learned things I never knew about XLOOKUP. I've always initially used it as just your straightforward lookup, and I think Aditya gave me a tip that kind of like helped me get a unique list or things that weren't in the previous list, which is another great use for XLOOKUP that I didn't realize I could do. Yeah, so it was only once I actually kind of like went into listening to Elliot talk a lot about Excel, about XLOOKUP, that we kind of got into the details. So you've set up a spreadsheet today to talk us through some XLOOKUP.
I've used XLOOKUP, and then from an XLOOKUP, you find the first value, and then you use that as a condition for the second value, and you can use that to kind of jimmy rig a list. Once filter, the speed constraints sometimes when you end up with a large list prevent me from using it. I really like filter, but I've been burned a couple of times in large cases.
Yep.
Have you found any way of doing kind of that? I guess I'll call it a recursive XLOOKUP. Would that be faster in your view than the filter? Or
it's a good question. The thing that I was thinking about when you said about like not returning multiple values is like I want it to work as like if you have sorted data and you have, whatever 10 occurrences of some particular client or something like that, and you want to, get all the associated values, you should be able to, XLOOKUP to find the first one, XLOOKUP to find the second one, and like I'm sure you're going to talk about, like one of the nice things about XLOOKUP is it returns the range rather than just the value, and so you can chain a couple of them together with XLOOKUP to here colon XLOOKUP to here to get a range. Except that kind of the opposite of what I was saying about how it's helpful that it separates out the options between are you looking for an exact match or small or larger versus is the data sorted? Um, the searching for the last and the first occurrence is in the same argument as the binary search. So there's not, like, if you have sorted data, there's not a way to say find the first occurrence in sorted data and find the last occurrence in sorted data. So you have to do the like non-speeded up version of that. Which, if you know that your data is sorted and they're all clumped together, it's still going to be probably faster than filter, maybe, but you kind of lose the speed advantage. More generally, the short answer is no. I haven't found anything like. I think you wouldn't get a huge speed bump unless you had sorted data, and if you do, I don't know. I mean, if you knew something structurally about your data that would allow you to say, like, for example, if you were looking up whole numbers, then you could do a binary search to find like the last smaller value and the first larger value, and then kind of clamp between those. But otherwise, you're going to have to kind of walk through the whole list much the same way filter would anyway. Like, I mean, you'll get part way and find one, but then if you start from there and go on, you'll end up having to go through the whole thing anyway. So
Yeah.
the short answer to your question that I've just waffled about for 3 minutes is I don't think so.
Yeah, and I guess as always, there's no one formula to rule them all, and it's just trying to figure out the specific use case. And
I feel
Don't
like
let Elliot
there
hear you
is
say that.
there is one formula to rule them all, and it would be XLOOKUP if there were. It is surprisingly flexible. So, I mean, you did you bring a couple of examples there in this case? Because I've noticed you've popped this into the case sheet for under pressure director's cut.
I did,
So
yeah.
I'm guessing you've got a trick or two up your sleeve that you're going to show off.
I don't know if would say a trick or two, but just some ways that I've used them and kind of would recommend using. They're yeah, so we can go through like the discussion and everything, and so, but yeah, so this is the level where we're getting into the NDL limits, and
Yeah.
and I will say, so all of this data is
Oh, I'm getting
real.
trauma flashbacks.
No, so
I mean, I have to say, I kind of loved that it was real data, that you could
Yeah.
kind of see, the grainy scan of the real thing right there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no. So when I first started diving, I was given a card like this, and we had to, use our finger to follow along and trace everything out. I definitely did not want anyone having to do that in the case, so converted that very manually into all of this data here. But based on
you didn't use Excel's amazing image import function.
it did not get me quite as far as I had hoped.
I imagine it would have
We'll put it
struggled
that
with
way.
the two values stacked in a cell.
Yep, the times and all of that. And changing data types, we've got numbers and letters
Yeah.
and times all in a single column or a single row. So yeah, but it's also real. It's real life data. We never get it as clean as we would like. Klinsman's case yesterday, that was fun to try and make that into usable data. So. All right, so the first piece I'm going to do is I guess we'll talk about spilled arrays. So this is one of the things that it does that I think is underutilized, I would say, in the general world. You can search a two-dimensional array and then return an entire one-dimensional array. And so in this case, and you can also see one of the optional arguments we'll get to, we're looking up the depth, and then based on the depth, we want to get the entire column. So in this case, we're going with 20. This just converts everything in 2 meters. And if we look for 20.12, we see that it's not found up here. And so that's where we get this now optional match mode of 1. And I wish it would get the helpers when you didn't when you had a value there, but in this case, if we do the exact match, you see we end up with an A because there isn't that 20 value. And then in diving, we're trying to be conservative. So we're looking for the next larger item. We're always rounding up. And of course, if we did a round up, that would just end up with 21. We're actually finding the next value larger than 20. And so in this case, that's going to be the 22. And then it's going to return this entire column. And so for this case, we now can take this new smaller data set and we can manipulate it. We could look for the first empty cell or the first non-numeric cell and filter based on that. In this case, it worked pretty well just to wrap that in a max, since these are not number values. If you just wrap that in a max, that'll give you the correct answer. But it was a way that I found to use the spilled arrays as well as the match mode in conjunction to make this a fairly straightforward level.
Fairly straightforward. This
is level 1.
difficulty ratings were something of a theme for this case.
Again, apologies for that. We're gonna waive the first time case author flag here. And I think the other Ben. So Benny Weber's the only one of us who has ever written a case before. All the rest of us had been kicking the idea around for a while. I was the first guinea pig. I think the other Bens have learned a little bit from my difficulty levels. So I don't think we will be seeing ones quite as difficult going forward.
Fingers crossed. The reason I'm saying fingers crossed is for just the whole theme of the tournament. being benevolent.
Well, and this is where, in my view, and Dim, watching your video, I thought 3.14 was a pretty obvious clue there.
Yeah.
So, all the levels have, I feel like, very nice, clear solutions that that you got everything. I love knowing that I got an entire level correct.
Except level 2. That one tripped
the
me
one
up
in the middle of
somehow.
level 2.
Yeah, I somehow ended up with a T in the middle.
Yeah,
so
I did the
it just
same.
looked
I
like
had
benevolent
benevolent
tournament. I
T
scanned it. I was like,
tournament.
yes, I got it.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be a space.
Yeah. So apologies on that one.
That's okay.
And I feel like you shouldn't be apologizing for when people pick out bits of your case that they found difficult, because that's what makes it interesting. As long as it's clear enough.
Yeah, and I did want a few edge cases. I like when, if you read really carefully and you make sure that you follow all the directions, you get everything. And if you miss one little thing, it doesn't blow up your entire level. So if you miss that one little bit and you looked outside the range, you miss one question, it's not gonna completely derail. You're not getting 0 points, which, at least for me, I find frustrating when I've gone through the work, I match the example, and then I apply it down, nothing looks obviously wrong, and then I find out after the fact, okay, I got 0 points. I get it, I miss a piece of the instructions, but it is tough.
Yeah, you want to calibrate it so that if you do 90% of the work, you're getting whatever 70, 80, 90% of the marks, not none and not 100%. It's easy to go wrong. Cases have kind of gone wrong in both directions. Where the hardest part only actually gets you one more question, or where missing one detail means you get 0. Yeah, I think that's the right philosophy to say, okay, if you do most of the work, you'll get most of the marks, but if you're not careful, then you may miss a bit.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I one place where I definitely saw that I overdid that was on, there's the one bonus question asking the sum of all the depths you dive to. No one got that one. Everyone had some piece of it they missed. So that would be one of those where I definitely over correct. It's difficult on the bonus question. It's a one-off, but definitely went too hard on that one. So, and the hints. This was another one of those pieces that hopefully is helping newer players, and definitely have
Yep.
the hint on the XLOOKUP and using the match modes and if not founds. So hopefully that was helpful to some users. I'm guessing that the more experienced people, they're not going to get a ton from the hints, but
Demo while we've got the screen up. Could you demo HAR mode?
yeah. So again, and this is kind of an homage back to the chat. Some people have difficulty reading instructions.
Some people
We're not
that
gonna
aren't
name
named
names
right
here.
here.
And so, I just wanted to add some really helpful highlights so that people can see, hey, these are the pieces that I actually need to pay attention to on each level.
What I
yeah.
would say is, did you attend my talk in Vegas?
I did. I think I was also chatting with, I want to say, Amber at that time. So it was kind of an in and out, but
There was a whole section on color blindness and accessibility.
and what's really bad there? My dad is colorblind. So
Like my brother's red-green colorblind, so when we've played
yeah.
room escape games, like online room escape game type things, we've played quite a few together. But anything that has to do with colors, I have to go. No, that's a color one. I've got to do that puzzle. You go do something else.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah,
can't even read out the colors to him, and then he does it because he just can't get the colors. And that one is very red on green, impossible to read.
So, and I guess talking to him, to my dad,
Yeah.
he can tell that there's a difference between the two. He just can't tell you this one is red and this one is green. And so, but yeah, like hearing about stoplights and like, oh yeah, you just know that the whatever color is on top and then the other one's on the bottom. And then he drives somewhere where the stoplights are horizontal, and it's like I don't know what's go and what's stop. So, anyways, yeah, I just grabbed some colors that I thought would pop, and they were opposite on the color wheel, and so yeah, apologies on
They
that.
certainly popped.
I was actually
yeah.
so what we need is HAR mode locked in the top row. So what I can do is I can click it on to read the instructions and click it off to read the question.
That would have been a good one.
Or we just put white writing on that dark green background. That's what's so
Yeah.
valid up.
No, so I mean that one was a little more of a joke than the other.
Yeah. Love
helpful
that. I love
parts of the
that
video
kind of
segment,
going in
but,
there.
I mean, the irony of HA mode is that the people who needed it most did not read enough to know that it was there. I
He
include
didn't read
myself
the
in that.
like he skipped past his own name in in the instructions at the top.
The funny thing is, I had even been primed on it because like I did it relatively late in the weekend, so I'd seen a bunch of stuff in the chat about HA mode, and like there was stuff in the instructions text before you started the case about it when there was no rush, and I read everything and blah blah blah, and I still didn't click on it. Just zoom. I just like immediately jump down to level 1 and go from there.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean I ribbed him a little bit earlier after I watched his video, and like he definitely took full advantage of my record video. I ended up doing that one I
100%.
think 4 or 5 times. For every time I had to make some changes, and the first couple of times I was really good about blocking everything out, not giving anything away, and by the last time I was like, I just need to get this out before the case launches. So it was
Yep,
funny to
I
watch.
milked that for all it had.
What you could have done was have this background video that actually gives away part of the director's cut video. And then Dim spends 10-15 minutes writing a bunch of lambdas for a level that's no longer there.
There we go.
I mean, I will say I
Totally
read the
throw it out.
instructions very carefully. I didn't I resisted the urge to actually attempt to solve anything before the case started.
Oh, that's greatly appreciated.
I mean, they're trying to be benevolent. They're giving us all the time we need to solve the case.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you know, it's funny that like you structurally you set it up as like there's unlimited time, you can take all the time you want, and then 15 minutes later you see, oh, Gang has finished the entire thing in 20 minutes. Oh man. Now the timer is up.
yeah,
I feel like
and I will say,
certain people should get the director's cut as a penalty for being too fast. And I'm actually including someone other than Dim in this as well.
it would be interesting to have like a handicapped case. Like depending on your
Oh, I
elo,
love
this is
that.
the case you get.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just adjusts the proportion of the case that is edge cases.
yeah, based on everyone's ELO, it's kind of like
Most advanced, if you missed a single instruction.
I'm again having written one case, I cannot imagine how difficult that would be, but it would be very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Guess we can go on to the next one. And so this is the one that tripped, I think, the most people up, including Dim. And that's
mean,
the if not found. And yeah, Jack, sorry, I'm speaking to Dim because I saw his solve, because he records them and publishes them out to the world. So I'm picking on him,
Yeah.
but most people miss this one. And so if we do look at our dive time, and Let's, I think most people in the competitive world are familiar with Let's, but
you
outside
might
of the
need to give
competitive
us like
world,
a more detailed kind of talk through what's happening in the formula, because the screen itself isn't going to be completely full screen in the video.
yeah,
So
no
it
problem.
might be a bit harder to read from a distance. But and also
Yeah.
some people listen to the podcast as a podcast.
This might be a little tricky for that, but we'll do our best there. Pretty much just really high level. Let allows you to define variables and then reuse them real time. I think they should definitely be used more in real life and work situations for documentation.
Absolutely.
They're fantastic.
It's great for documentation, great for auditing.
Oh, incredible. Andrew and I had a great talk where he talked about let and using it for documentation. So definitely use it. All I'm doing here is I'm just changing which output is used. So dig into this at your leisure. But this is the table that we're looking at, and this is just broadcasting out the array. And this is the one where most people, if you just look at this column over in the dive tables, you end up going past the bottom of the table. This is the one dive that isn't doable just based on the time and the depth that you're going to. And so you end up going past the table and coming down and getting, I think in this one you end up getting the T, which is why it returns
An error.
an additional T here. And then a lot of people kind of saw this benevolent tournament all blended as one word and then just moved on from there.
Right.
And so you had to kind of take care of that. But then you start looking, the final step in the output is you're looking at the 17 in this table. And looking for the next larger value if it's not found. And so since there is no 17 here, we end up with an if not found error. And normally, if I just go XLOOKUP 17 in this array, you end up with an error because it can't find that 17. And even if I do the match mode next larger item, it's still not found. And so because of that, I want to, and I explicitly say up here in the instructions that we want to return exceeds NDL, exceeds the no decompression limit. And so that's where this if not found variable is going to help you return the correct answer.
Yeah.
And again, great in real life, if you have an error, you want something flagged because it doesn't fit. Maybe there's an order number that you're cross-referencing, and if you can't find that order number, then there's probably an issue with your database or your system or something. Something I've seen many times. So sometimes you just want to kind of hide that. If you don't find anything, then okay, just return 0. It doesn't matter. But sometimes you want to use that as a flag, and that can be really useful. So wanted people to be able to practice using it, in this case, as a flag.
One thing I can't move on from talking about the if not found argument without a warning that the if not found argument is not array friendly. So like the most basic case that this comes up in is if you have a set of values and you have like a table of overwrites, like, I don't know, if it's X, then change it to Y, and if it's P, then change it to Q, and otherwise leave it as it is. So like the natural way you would write that would be XLOOKUP this range in here, returning from here, and if not found, just give me that range back. Which seems like it ought to work, but it doesn't work because it doesn't like to have an array as the if not found. So in other words, in that case, if you have the top left cell not found, it'll return the top left cell from the array. But if you have the bottom right cell not found, it'll also return the top left cell from the array as the if not found. So it always just returns the first value from the if not found array, no matter, like, even if it matches the size of your array. So like it should be that, the XLOOKUP if not found gives you the same thing as if error XLOOKUP, then this other thing. But if what you have is an array, then you get a different, and in my opinion more sensible, result by saying if error XLOOKUP array.
Yeah, no, thanks for flagging that. Arrays are, I love the flexibility of Excel, and I don't have a deep programming background, but the ability to just say, take the text 5 and do -1 or minus or whatever, and it just becomes a number is magical. It's amazing. I love it. But sometimes that ambiguity kind of bites you in the butt. So Jim, that is definitely one of those cases you're talking about. All right, so next one I wanted to talk about, and this is probably the place where I see people use index match, well, in this case, index match the most, as opposed to a nested XLOOKUP, and that's making it two-dimensional. And so I think most people are familiar with, I'm looking up a value in here, and I'm going to go equals, easier to look at. And then I'm going to go X match, look up the value Y in this, and then match 12 in this.
I think you have your X matches the wrong way around. Revealing yourself as an XLOOKUP preferer.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Row column.
All right, so it then goes and finds our value. So in XLOOKUP, you can, as we talked about earlier, you can return an array, and so I have this wrapped in TOCOL just so for visual purposes, and it's easier to go side by side, but you don't actually need to do that. You can just look up in the table and return the array. In this case, we're going to return it based on the 2652. And so that's going to come up here, and it's going to go across and grab this entire row. And then if we have another XLOOKUP where we're looking up, and again, ignore the transpose, but we've got that input as our return array, and then we can look up based on the additional value that we're using. And again, right now I've got it broken out, but we can, so XLOOKUP, sure we're using the same. Just want to make sure I'm looking up based on the same items. So let's look up the Y. And in this case, it doesn't matter which direction we're going. Again, one of the benefits there. And so this is going to give us a one-dimensional array, and then we can wrap that inside of another XLOOKUP. And we'll just grab the vertical one here.
Yeah.
And so this second one is going to return an array, and then this outer one is going to pick the correct value within that array. So I said, I feel like this is kind of a jump that many people in the competitive Excel world haven't made. But by doing this, you have a lot of access to all of the optional modes.
Yeah, I do have a lambda in my collection called XLOOKUP 2D by deLeon. deLeon.
I love that one.
Which I'm guessing is just this, but it's just arrange the inputs. Yeah.
Yep. And it doesn't have quite as much flexibility as manually writing it out all yourself, but it's much quicker. And I've shared this one in the file, so it's public for anyone to use. And I've kind of set it up so that I can have more flexibility or less flexibility. You'll often find a table set up like this, and I want to grab, I'm looking up based on the first column and row. And so I can automatically, if I don't give it a row and column to look up, it's just going to say, hey, that first one is what we're looking up in. So I can just go 14 and D, and it's going to say, all right, cut off those top ones. Those are going to be our lookups, and then find everything. Sometimes based on the setup that maybe I'm looking up here for the times, and so I don't actually want to go all the way to the front.
Yeah.
In that case, I would be looking at this data here, and then I would be looking up based on the row columns, and then I could find the IE, and it will return that. So that one is shared in the file. Feel free to take a look at it. You don't have to use it. You can use the nested XLOOKUPs, but it's definitely one that I am glad that I have in my arsenal, just from a speed perspective.
Yeah. I've definitely pulled yours out a couple of times when I can't be bothered writing XLOOKUP inside XLOOKUP.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, I've done it enough times. I don't mind writing an XLOOKUP inside an XLOOKUP, and for work product, that's what I would do. For competitive Excel, I don't think I've done that in a year, and I use my XLOOKUP 2D at least every other case.
Yeah.
Just tables are so often used.
Yep.
And then the last example, I believe,
I was looking forward to this one.
So which part?
Well, I'm seeing regex written there.
All right. So we'll go right into the regex. So one of the challenges I wanted to add in here is there are each square is 1/2 nautical mile by 1/2 nautical mile, and so presumably you would have some locations where you have multiple dive sites. And so in this case we've got S24 and S29 that are both in the same dive site. A few others, or over here off to the side. That's some work I've got going for something else, but you can see where there are multiple dive sites. And so when I'm looking for the dive site specifically, and I want to find SO1, if I look up SO1, I may find that or I may not find it. And so this one, let me just grab just so we can see what it looks like without the regex mode. So for a number of these, it's going to work just fine.
Yeah.
So it looks for SO1, it finds SO1. But when it looks for SO2, it can't actually find that. And if we come back over here and we just look up SO2, see why we can't find it, it's because there is no SO2. There's SO2/SO4, but that's not a match. And so since this is text and not numbers, I can't do an approximate match or anything like that. I need to find this exact text. And so what regex allows us to do is say, all right, I want to look within all of that text and I want to find where is SO1. And you can use any of the optional or any of the modifiers within regex to do that. For example,
I'm
if
literally kicking myself right now.
well, again, if you're learning from it, that's kind of the whole benefit, and hopefully that's something that you can do and use in future.
When I was doing this, because I had all the time in the world, I'm enjoying the benevolent tournament because I enjoy playing things at my own slow, little, happy pace. But I did sit there and go, I'm not sure how I'm going to look this up. I don't really feel like doing a find and then a lookup on the find and that kind of thing, which is like how I might have done that in the past. I ended up duplicating rows and splitting out the SO2 and SO4 so that I had them as separate, basically additional inserted rows in my data for lookup.
Jack, do you remember when we had JJ on and he was talking about unsplivet?
Yes.
This was perfect case for unsplivet.
I should have worn my unsplivet shirt for that then.
Yeah, no, and I'll plug Hayden's recent regex course. He just published that, so anyone that has not taken on regex, it pays dividends.
I have been looking forward to that
immediately.
I didn't realize you could literally just add the regex.
Yeah, I mean, it is as simple as just saying, "Hey, 3." Now, if
I was
for example,
I'm against using. Well, I'm against using it. I'm not against using it. I'm not using it because I've got this mental block because I haven't done Hayden's course yet. And I spent a year with the regex cheat sheet next to me, and I was kind of like, I'm not learning anything from this. I never got any further. But that
no,
is...
and I tried the cheat sheet and it didn't help. Fortunately, I learned it before Hayden's course, and so for me, I was just like, all right, I'm going to do some Googling, and then I went to my AI of choice and just said, hey, I'm trying to learn regex. Like, give me a bunch of examples to solve, and there is a deep regex repository online, and so there's lots of information for it to pull from. And I just kind of did a self-created course, but definitely helpful to have something esports specific. So
yeah,
for the shot. And once it's in your arsenal, and not just like I know this thing exists, but I'm comfortable with it, you're going to find a million use cases for it. So
yeah, and I will say it's one of those things where like the return on your first half hour or your first couple of hours experimenting with it is pretty good, and then for quite a while after that, like the more modifiers and variables and other things that you get comfortable with, the more powerful it becomes. So like for instance with this one, you were actually a little bit generous in having all the IDs be the same length, because if your 1, 2, and 3 had been S1, S2, S3, then S1 could have matched against S13 or whatever. Which and technically this, like the match as you did it of like, does it contain this, you could have done that with a wildcard character of like star S01 star or something like that. But if you had it in kind of harder mode where there were variable lengths and some were prefixes of other, you can still do that with regex if you put in, you know, like a word break at the start and at the end. So it's one of these things like, if all you do is think of it as, well, if I put in 3 as the regex argument, then it becomes contains, then that's already a huge help. But then, you know, you learn a little bit more, like about word breaks or about, you know, pluses and stars or you know, character classes or whatever, you can do so much more. But I do think it's one of those things that, like, from very early on, you get some payback.
Yeah. For me, I didn't feel like I got quite as much payback early on, just to kind of have an opposing view, just because it didn't come to mind. I knew the very, very basics. It wasn't until I got a little more in depth that I was like, okay, I didn't necessarily have to understand everything, but I needed to put a couple of hours in before it became the go-to solution. So
Interesting.
different experience.
I mean, so I wonder, part of that for me is probably the thing that got me into, you know, dipping a toe in regex in competition was probably watching Bo's videos, and seeing, you know, the the little kind of surgical strike, like, oh, one tiny bit of regex here makes this whole thing pop out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's easy to learn a bunch of regex and not immediately see applications and not get a quick payoff. So yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
That is an amazing use. I can't believe it is just as simple as, in this case, not even needing to know regex.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the number of times that just adding this 3, again, it's only been a few months for me, but the number of times where I've just had to add the 3, or I've tried a case from the archive and realized that's all I needed to do, is astounding. So
Right.
this is, I feel like, is probably one of the key takeaways, is this regex search.
It's funny. I wrote a case for Klinsmann for the MEWC Brazil competition a few years ago that was all about, like, text manipulations, and it was before I knew regex. And I watched Jean Volley do a walkthrough video of it, I don't know, a month or so back, you know, heavily using regex, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. Or the other one I remember was Formula Bar and Grill, and I remember the first time just going through and find and replace en masse. Like, all right, let's just try and convert all of these burgers, fries, and, like, it was such a pain. And reattempting it later on with regex, and, like, oh my goodness, I really, really kicking myself for not knowing that in the past. But you just move forward from today. So.
Yep.
All right. So, is that the final item that you're showing us? Or do you have more tricks up your sleeve?
Generally, I mean, the last one, and it's nesting the opposite direction. Oh, I didn't say opposite direction, but nesting, using a lookup to then give you your next lookup ID.
Okay.
And so,
rather than your return array, it's giving you.
Right. So, in this case, we know we want black tip wall, but black tip wall doesn't actually give us any helpful information. S19, on the other hand, does give us useful information. And so, because that tells us our location that we can then use to look up our depth. So, in this case, I've broken it out, but it's very simple to then just have this as your first lookup that becomes your lookup value. And so, instead of writing this, I mean, obviously you can reference the prior one, but when you're just writing everything out for speed, I often find that I can just type equals XLOOKUP, write the first function. Okay, I know that's now my lookup value, and then look that against an array and a return array.
So instead of looking up like a 2D table like we'd normally do with the XLOOKUPs, what we're looking at here is you're connecting tables effectively.
Yeah,
if you're thinking of things in terms of database tables or layouts that are separate tables.
Yeah, I
Love
actually
it.
find that as like nested XLOOKUPs go, I find that one easier to wrap my head around, where it's, okay, now I'm just getting the lookup argument compared to the sort of
The
index
2D.
match equivalent where
Mhm.
what you're returning is your lookup array rather than your lookup value. Yeah, I find that one a more intuitive.
Yeah, I would agree. Most people find it easier to kind of think in I would say, more concrete terms of values than arrays. Um,
Yeah.
I guess I would have thought you would have been one of those people that found it easier to think in terms of arrays, but
I mean,
Yep.
I get there, but it's I'm still for 2D. I'm still more of an index match. Well, I mean, now I'm more of a lambda person, obviously, but
I honestly I haven't used index xmatch since XLOOKUP came out. Right. So we are actually kind of running out of time here. I'm starting to
all
sound
right.
like
I
Tim
know I
Blake.
went quite in detail there.
No worries. I think that was
detail is
really
welcome on this podcast.
interesting. To close up the chat on XLOOKUP, I'd like to finish. What I'm trying to start doing is finishing on real world applications of our niche Excel topic. So obviously with XLOOKUP, we already know it has more. It's pretty useful in day-to-day Excel in its most basic form. But which of these more niche uses do you think can be transferable to the real world?
Well, so not to keep going on additional use cases, but what I found actually as one of the most useful is that I can use an array as an input. So often, well, we'll start just here. I want black tip. We'll go the dive sites, and then we'll just grab depth. It doesn't really matter what we're grabbing. And we get the one individual value, and then fix the references, drag that down, and it's recalculating it 20 times, which 20 times, whatever, not a big deal. When it becomes 200,000 times, all of a sudden that can be a real bottleneck. And so working with large data, similar to what Ashley was talking about last week, and obviously Power Query is the way to go where you can, but sometimes you have to do that in Excel. And being able to pass in an array and just solve it hit enter one time, that was an amazing speed boost on some of my larger
Yeah.
files that were really slowing down.
I imagine it's also
so
a bit more of a robust solution as well, because if you're working with dynamic arrays in your models at work, you don't want to have individual lines next to each potential value. If the array grows or decreases, you need to make sure your formula is long enough or short enough. Whereas in this case, you're just treating it the same size. And if you are modeling with dynamic arrays, you should really be doing things where your dynamic arrays are feeding into more dynamic arrays.
Yeah, agreed. So I would say that's probably the biggest one I found. The if not found is also one that
That would
you
be the
just
one that I
using
would
to
come
create
up with.
flags. Yeah,
Yeah.
using it to create
So
flags, it's very helpful.
one thing I think Dim said before about XLOOKUP with the if not found is that it can actually block the fact that there are errors in your data, depending on how you use it. But it could also be used, as you say, to create a flag, and then you can have some checks at the top saying how many times does this flag appear to see actually we need to go and check the input data, something has been updated or whatever. So
Yep.
Dim, any input on that with your XLOOKUP usage in the real world?
I mean, honestly, I think this is one where almost every aspect of it is useful in the real world. I mean, it depends a bit on what you work with, but like most people have something to look up. So like obviously XLOOKUP in general, very applicable. But if you're, I would say probably a lot more people than realize it would benefit from, say, regex mode in XLOOKUP. Would benefit from being able to return an array or being able to return a reference to build a range or that kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot to get out of this one in the real world.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, before we wrap up, it's time for XL Hot Takes. This is the segment where we discuss a controversial opinion on XL. Let's have a little XL Hot Takes jingle.
XL hot take. What will they say? Is this array in disarray? XL hot takes.
All right. So I've heard from producer Johnny, and our hot take for today is from Anoop. And Anoop says F1 and F3 should be moved to the functionality of F2 to improve the world and working lives of keyboards. I think it would improve the world if we didn't have F1.
I mean, I'd welcome it on F1. I'd fight you on F3.
Yeah. I use F3 obsessively at the moment, especially Control Shift F3 in cases. It does all my auto naming for me.
Yeah. I don't know that one is exactly a hot take. I don't think. I mean, again, the F3 fine, but I mean, who wouldn't want F1 to instead scroll through the colon dot colon dot colon dot, like have some good functionality there that I know has been discussed. But yeah, I don't think our community would fight you on that. Microsoft probably would.
I think I actually am going to take the opposite viewpoint on this one.
Okay.
So F3, I've already expressed my opinion of. I love F3. It's become, I never used to use F3. I used F2 and Alt F4, and that was like that section of the keyboard. That was my use. F3 now obsessively, Control Shift F3, Alt F3, all your like just setting up your names and stuff like that. But with the advent of OA Robot, I'm actually using F1 an awful lot. And that is because if I need to know a bit more about what I'm doing, or if I want to look at an entire robot, I can just hover over that in OA Robot, like, go to compbot and then press F1, and it generates all of this documentation for me magically, which is one of my favorite. Why am I not wearing my OA Robot cap? It's like a rare occurrence not to be wearing one of those. But that I found I've ended up using F1 an awful lot more than I have in the past. And even just in Excel, I started using the F1 button. Don't tell anyone. Every now and again. So a lot of the functions that we're getting these days have so much more depth and flexibility than they used to have. Like XLOOKUP, we're just discussing it. I'm finding out things today that I didn't realize. And that's the thing with a lot of the functions. There's so many elements that you might not realize. So if I say go into filter and I want to see if it can do something a bit different from what I normally do, I actually press F1 and bring up the options on the right and just have a quick read through it, because it's a lot better than it was, even 2-3 years ago. But in the last 20 years, it's just been that F1 key is a pain in the butt when you accidentally hit it.
Yeah, it's a lot less offensive now that it pops up a side pane than when it
Yes.
used to be like, I will take
No,
over
it's
your
just,
screen.
like take over your entire screen, and it takes ages to load up. It takes you off to a web page or something to kind of like look at your function. I'm like, no. It is a lot less offensive, and it's starting to actually be useful for the first time in its life. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it went to the ExcelJet page on the function, I would use it a little more. I never find the Microsoft descriptions to be the most helpful.
Yeah.
But
Fair, very fair.
All right. So, comment on this podcast or email us as your own hot take to the list for discussion, or to tell us whether you want to keep your F1 and F3 keys Or do you just kind of like rip out the F1 and get on with life like the rest of us do? So
I would never
thank
dream of hurting my beautifully conditioned keyboard in any way like that.
it's a lot harder on a laptop keyboard, not gonna lie. Thank you all for joining us today. Special thanks to Ben for being such a great and organized guest, as usual. What's going on in your lives? Where can people find us? I'm Jack Kennedy. You can find me at XLOOKUP. Dim, where can people find you? What are you up to?
Oh, I'm getting harder to find these days. I'm in New York a little longer, but then we're hitting the road for a while. The adventure begins in just under a month. So yeah, then I'm going to become hard to find, but I'll still be on YouTube when I can find the time.
Are we packing up the house at the moment?
We're not quite that organized, but you know, we should be, and before long we will have to be.
And Ben,
Like with the ball.
what's happening in your
Um,
life? And if people want to find you, I heard there's a little rumor that you may potentially be thinking about giving us a director's cut video.
Getting what?
Giving us a director's cut video.
Yeah.
walkthrough.
So I have never done a YouTube video before for really much of anything. But the director's cut, I would like to give that kind of as a first shot. So looking to do that in the next couple of days, and I'll publish that. I think my YouTube channel is Ben Swimmin, but it's the same one that was used for the intro video.
Excellent. We'll
So
put a link to that
I
in
will
the comments below.
share that.
Thank
So,
you.
but yeah, otherwise I'm not anywhere as exciting as New York. I'm down in Atlanta. We are a pretty small group in the Excel world, but if there's anyone else, I know Jacob and I have grabbed coffee, but I think we're the only two that I am aware of down in this neck of the woods. So
I know it's lonely out in the middle of the sticks, isn't it? Where there's no one to just meet up with you and on a whim like
yeah,
that. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. There are full video versions of the podcast at YouTube at the X Files. And we'll see you again next time. Goodbye.
Bye.